And I'll call the meeting of Waco City Council on December 17, 2024 to order at 3:05 p.m. Merry Christmas, everybody. Happy Hanukkah, joyful Kwanzaa, Feliz Navidad, Vesel Venoce, all those. Welcome to the work session of the Waco City Council. Welcome everybody here at the Bosque Theater Gallery here in beautiful downtown Waco. Thanks for everybody for being here, and welcome everybody on the viewers at home watching on the Waco City Cable channel. Thank you for being here and thank you for joining us. I'm Mayor Jim Holmes. I have with me here Alicia Rodriguez, council members Alicia, Josh Borderud, George Chase, and Mayor Pro Tem Darius Ewing. Andrea Bearfield is on her way. She'll be here shortly. So we will start the meeting today with a moment of silence. All right, the first order of business today is the work session. Speakers will recognize anybody who wants to speak on an agenda item. City Secretary Hicks, do we have any speakers registered? No. We do not. Seeing no one is registered to speak, we will now recess the regular session and convene into work session with a report from the City Manager. City Manager Ford.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Got a brief report here today. I want to start with a employee recognition item from our City Secretary's office. She has been well supported this past parade season, we'll call it, from a number of departments, but particularly from our facilities department. They not only helped with driving the council float, but also built some new additions to the float. And so wanted to highlight Larry Skanes, Tom Austin, Gamero Rodriguez, as well as Anthony Alexander for their work in supporting the council as you're getting out there into all these various parades. So thanks. If you don't mind, Derek, letting the staff know the council and City Secretary Manager's office appreciate and recognize their work this year.
Bradley, can I just add
Sure.
to that real quick? Yeah, the Wonderland Parade was just was so much fun, and big shout out to Parks for running a great parade. But I wanted to make sure that facilities got their due, that Parks staff, Anthony, got their due. Our float was beautiful. I mean, it was just the best thing we've ever had. So thank you. Also enjoyed having the Waco flag on the pickup too. I think it's fun to lead out and share with goodwill and pride, and I think we did that. Michelle Hicks and her team are just always so amazing at it. So thanks again. I think that generates a lot of goodwill. People like to see us coming.
And I actually forgot, I apologize to the Perdon family.
Yes.
For coming out and representing as the Grinch. Kathy was dressed up as the Grinch. It was amazing.
And Cindy Lou was on the front page. That was amazing.
Special. That's special. Mayor and Council, we've got 4 informal reports on your agenda today, finishing out the year strong on our IRs. First one speaks to water and wastewater rate changes coming up at the beginning of the year. These were adopted in the fiscal year 24-25 city budget. For our average residential customer, they'll see an increase of about $4.77 from their 2024 water and wastewater charges. And for small commercial customers, there'll be an increase of about $7 from their 2024 water and wastewater charges. More information in the IR, obviously, if you want to go deeper on those changes. IR 978 provides you our quarterly investment report for the quarter ending at the end of September of 2024. IR 979 provides an update on an important community project, the mural project over at South Waco Community Center. We have an updated project completion timeline on that at the end of, our original timeline was going to be done by the end of the year. We're pushing that out about 3 weeks now due to some unexpected changes. We do anticipate once the mural is completed in January to host a ribbon cutting ceremony and mural of the unveiling, and council, of course, will be invited to that and be part of that ceremony. Looking forward to that. And lastly, IR 980 provides an update on the Doris Miller Indoor Pool Operations and Management Plan, including our anticipated hours of operations, our program offerings, how we plan to staff it, as well as our budget and revenue estimates. Tentatively, that pool is going to be open January 25th of 2025. And looking forward to the community having a community pool that's accessible to the whole of Waco. On public hearings tonight, we have 5. Galen Price, our Director of Community Services, will conduct a public hearing on 988. And then Clint Peters will cover the other 4, our Director of Development Services. He'll cover the other 4. Hopefully, we'll have time in the work session for Clint to give a briefing on those. If not, we'll move it into the regular session later this evening. We have 33 resolutions on the agenda tonight. I think that puts our resolution count well over 1,000 for the year. So kudos, council. You've handled a lot of business this year, a lot of good business. It's been done. I do anticipate a long work session as well as a long executive session. So I'll take any questions that you might have of me, and then we'll jump right into the work sessions.
Anybody have any questions? Council members? Just quick comments on the resolutions. You can see 995, 996, or there's a $5 million investment in a grocery that we're trying to get downtown. That'll be an exciting project as we see that hopefully come to fruition. Also, just victory laps on some of these investments from previous years relative to economic development on Capstone Mechanical, which is a local business that did some improvements to their headquarters and created a lot of new jobs. And also Envases, a new company that moved to Waco from Mexico, on just kind of summarizing some of the amendments to the agreements we had to do with their number of jobs that they are bringing to the city, in addition to the ones you've seen in the news here on Electrolit. This is a $400 million investment with 200 new jobs in the Vantran deal from a couple weeks ago that's bringing 700 new jobs to Waco. So we're ending the year on a really great note here from an economic development perspective. Pretty excited about that. That's all I have, Bradley.
All right.
Any other questions for City Manager Ford? None. The next item is the consent agenda. The consent agenda includes resolutions 2024-993 through resolution 2024-1025. There is one affidavit of substantial interest, that's 995, so we'll be voting on that one separately. Are there any other items that the council would like to remove from the agenda? There are none. So the consent agenda will include resolutions 2024-993 through 2024-1025, except for 2024-995. The next item on the agenda is work session items 2024-981 through 2024-985. City Manager Ford, will you please introduce the first work session?
Sure. We are going to start with the speaker that we think is most likely to deliver his project on time. And that's our representative from TxDOT. That's a little bit of a joke, but we've got Clayton Zaka coming up. He's our TxDOT area engineer, and he's, listen, Clayton and Stan and the team at TxDOT have got several projects under their belt recently that have been delivered very effectively. I wanted to have him here today to speak to a couple of the projects that are moving forward into construction into the coming years. And those 3 large projects they'll speak from are, of course, the what's called 4C on the interstate, as well as the Twin Bridges, Spur, as well as Spur 298 and New Road. Each of these obviously has a lot of community impact, and look forward to hearing from Stan and Clayton today and furthering our relationship between TxDOT and the city. So thanks, guys, for being here.
Appreciate the intro. Am I controlling the presentation? Okay. All right, just a quick highlight of the interstate project. I think most are familiar with the limits from the south end of our previously completed 4B job down to the State Highway 6 interchange. Big thing to highlight is this project led in October of this year, was awarded to James Construction for $234 million. Right now, tentative start date's in February of 2025. I'm looking at a completion date of early 2029. So this is just a stick diagram of final configuration of the project. This shows all of our intersections, which are all going to be rebuilt as part of the project. You'll have widened intersections, U-turns added to every single intersection, upgraded signals, and here you can see the final location of ramps. This schematic is available on our public website, along with a more detailed schematic for those that are interested. I'll have another slide giving that website along with some other information. Similar to our previous 4B project, we have identified some key areas that are going to be of more significant impact than others. We are incentivizing those to try to accelerate those phases. We've identified 2 major phases, so similar to the previous project. All main lane traffic is going to be shifted to one side of the roadway to build the opposite half. This project will actually be built in reverse order of the previous 4B job. So all traffic will be moved to the existing southbound main lanes, 2 lanes in each direction while we build northbound. Of note in that phase, if you've noticed on 4B, there are 4 lanes coming southbound now. That will be reduced to 2. So knowing that's going to be a little bit more of an impact, there's a higher incentive rate there, so our contractor has the potential to earn up to $6 million in incentives and bonuses for early completion. Once traffic is moved to that newly constructed pavement, we are able to restore a 3rd lane coming southbound, so a little bit less of an impact at that point, but you have 3 lanes southbound, 2 northbound. Still the opportunity to earn up to $3 million of bonus for that phase. And then on top of it, we've added an additional $1.24 million for overall project completion. To earn that max bonus, you're looking at roughly 3 months ahead of schedule. On top of our main lane bonuses, we've also got a $1 million lane closure balance. Our contractor has the potential to earn another $1 million on top of the phased incentives. And then something we learned from 4B is at times there were some impacts to some of the cross streets and local streets, so we have added an additional $500,000 bonus to New Road. So anytime that New Road is reduced to less than 2 lanes in either direction, our contractor is going to be charged a daily rate for that closure. Again, incentivizing them to keep as much traffic moving through there as possible and get in and get out. But again, an additional $500,000 there. And then at Irving, Lee, and Primrose, there will be a roughly 2-week closure. There's a large drainage structure that has to be installed at that intersection, but to do so, the intersection will have to be fully closed. We've added a $10,000 a day charge for any day in excess of that allowable 2 weeks. So try to incentivize them to get in and out there as well.
Clayton, can I ask you, it's great that you're building in all these incentives. I think we're excited that this could move at a good clip with just great workmanship and good project deadlines on schedule or ahead of schedule in some cases. And the whole council is grateful for the support of and partnership of TxDOT in this major project in our community. I wanted to ask you, are these incentives, do you expect this timeline as we go through your presentation to be more like I-35 B that was just completed, as opposed to a very lengthy project that happened a few counties to our south that we think about sometimes without naming?
Councilman, this job, while it's smaller than 4B, the contractor bids the time as part of the competitive process, and they bid it longer than 4B was. All these incentives are based on their schedule, not on ones that TxDOT dictates, which is totally different than the way that we built other projects in the district. So they did bid their maximum time allowable in the contract, but we also got major concessions on the bid side, on the dollar side of the bid. So it kind of balances out. It will be a longer project time-wise. There's always this opportunity to go shorter, but.
And these incentives would help that?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
That's how it's designed, yes.
Thank you all so much. That's
And
helpful.
one thing I didn't mention, just to add on, is we've got caps on the incentive side. These daily rates also work to the negative. So if a contractor does go over, they're being charged damages with no cap on that.
Okay, so there's both incentive and disincentive.
Correct.
Stick and carrot. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Any other questions before I move on from?
Nothing.
I just had a comment, but I think you're going to talk about it on the next slide. One thing that made 4B such a success, Mr. Zock and Mr. Switek, was TxDOT's communication process. That may be what the slide here is about. But you guys were excellent. I want to commend you for always telling people what's going on, what streets are going to be closed, where do you need to drive tomorrow or on your way to work in the morning, what's the best route, what's going to be closed, what's going to be open, what's happened next, what is the next part of the road look like. And your communication and transparency was excellent. And I'm looking forward to that same level of service that TxDOT has always provided on this next project. I know it's a different, as Councilmember Borders pointed out, it's a different contractor And we're going to try to hold everybody to the same standard of transparency we had last time. But again, this is exciting to get the south part of the interstate done. I think it's the last little bit between the Mexican border and the northern border here. So I think it'll be a great asset for the city when it's completed. But I just want to commend you on your planning and communication process. Has always been fantastic.
Appreciated. And a lot of the same players are still in place on this project, on the TxDOT side. Then we've also got the same public outreach team on board for this project. I'm going to plug Jake Smith is here in the room with us as well, our public information officer, so he'll be a key part of the puzzle there. We do have a project website. It's got some of the schematics and diagrams, a project email. We'll have a project hotline, a social media handle, and once you're at that website, you can sign up for those notices that you mentioned. There will also be a steering committee similar to 4B, and then intend to have I believe, like a open house prior to actually breaking ground. So, just before I move on from the interstate, any other questions on that project? Okay, moving on to Twin Bridges. This project is going out for bids in January, so looking at a spring, summer timeframe to get started on work. Again, that's replacing both bridges over Lake Waco. We'll be widening to 3 12-foot lanes, 10-foot shoulders in each direction. Did want to note that that cost estimate is actually an error. It's actually around $70.7 million is what's estimated right now. Our tentative schedule is at 3 years, but again, this is going to be a similar structure to 4B and 4C where the contractor will bid the time. So that 3 years is just approximate and subject to change at the bidding table. But we have included an additional $3.5 million of incentive on this job as well. You'll see that there's some similar challenges to the interstate. There will be a period of time where traffic is reduced to a single lane in each direction and moved to one of the existing structures. But what we've done as part of the design, if you can see on the left-hand side there, so everything shown in red is part of the new structures. So you could put in drill shafts, columns underneath and in between the existing bridges, so there's no real traffic impact to start work. That'll let us build as much as we can without those impacts. And of course, we flip to the head-to-head configuration, and that's where the milestones and incentives kick in at that point. Again, that time frame is very approximate at this point based on the contractor's bid. Once that new structure is complete, we're able to actually open up 2 lanes each direction at that point due to the new width, complete the other structure, and then move to project completion. We'll note the bridges show 3 lanes. The 2 inside lanes are through lanes. The outside lane acts like a long auxiliary lane between the entrance and exit ramps on either side of the bridge. So you're really carrying through the bridge, but then picking up 2 on either side. But the nice thing is it will accommodate that 3rd lane in the future when we do expand State Highway 6 headed to the north. Any questions on Twin Bridges?
Probably the biggest problem with this project is that it's going to look like one bridge and when it's done, so it won't be twin bridges anymore.
And then final project, just a quick update, is our Franklin and New Road project. This is between Waco Drive and Valley Mills. Current estimate is right around $45 million. We've got a tentative letting date in FY26 currently, and just an estimated time frame of 2 years. I think most are familiar with the schematic at this point, but just a reminder, we're consolidating the roadways in this area. So right now there's main lanes and frontage roads. That's going to be consolidated to a single roadway in each direction. There's a number of crossovers there's an accident history on this corridor, so we're eliminating those conflict points as part of the project. Installing U-turns at the New Road intersection at either end of the project to allow for that circular movement, and then installing an overpass there at the New Road interchange. That's really all I've got to highlight on this one at this time, so I guess I'll open it up to any questions.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Saka or Mr. Switek? I'll just say that Clayton, a lot of us up here have served on the MPO. Oh, here you are, Councilmember Bearfield is here. And she's also on the MPO, Metropolitan Planning Organization. I always look forward to the Clayton Saka show at that deal where we see these over all the updates of the projects. I'm glad you brought this to council today on these 3 super projects, over $300 million worth of projects here that TxDOT has chosen Waco and Central Texas to work on. So we love these improvements, the safety associated with those, and Some of these roads are not in great condition, and particularly what really compelled us to do the 4C was safety issues and the weaving that's taking place there now, and that's all going to look a lot better and a lot nicer and a lot more conducive to safe driving. So again, I appreciate TxDOT, and you guys are fantastic, and I love everything you're doing for us here in the city of Waco.
Appreciate it.
Mayor, just briefly, so in terms of the sequencing of these projects, is it possible that each will be going on around the same, will there be overlap of all three at a given point in time?
It is possible.
Okay. So we just need to be, we need to,
We'll communicate the impacts as best as we can ahead of time.
okay. One question too, talked about U-turns. Let's say you're coming from downtown on Franklin. One backed up left-hand turn lane is there at New Road. A lot of that traffic is trying to get into Walmart or Chick-fil-A or Rosa's or wherever. Will there be a U-turn instead of that left?
Yeah, it's hard to tell in the schematic, and this is available on our website as well, but
Okay.
kind of the green shade where the New Road arrow is pointing, there will be a U-turn that allows you to make that movement back towards the Chick-fil-A.
Does that make sense? Where you don't have to wait at New Road? Does that make sense?
It'll be a free flow, so it'll
Okay,
be similar
before
to the interstate U changes where you have the U-turn separate from the intersection.
Okay.
It'll be the same setup there.
I think that'll be a great improvement.
Agreed.
Appreciate it. Thanks. Appreciate you guys.
Will you, and you may have already said this, will you all be able to keep one lane on the Twin Bridges, one lane going always, or will it be shut down completely sometimes?
So one lane each direction. There may be some periodic operations where you've got a nighttime closure or something
Sure.
like that, beam sets, panel sets. But they would be more short duration nightly. Other than that, it would be one lane each direction at a minimum.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
The next item is work session 2024-982, City Manager Ford.
Right, our next one is a discussion of the Floyd Casey redevelopment project, including a review of the history and current status. And I've got Jonathan Garza, I believe, coming up from, yeah, there he is, from Turner Brothers. He's the Director of Real Estate Development, as well as Jeremy Pacina, from our Economic Development team, to provide this update and also hear about an extension request of their development agreement. So, Jeremy, I think you're going to kick us off.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. My name is Jeremy Pacina, Assistant Director of Economic Development, and here with me is Jonathan Garza, Director of Development for Turner Brothers Real Estate. So the purpose of today's presentation is to review the MDA, or Master Development Agreement, the terms, the incentives, to provide an update on the current status of the Floyd Casey redevelopment project, and to consider extending the completion deadline for the public and open space improvements associated with the project, and we have a staff recommendation for additional requirements as well. How we're going to accomplish this is we're going to review the project history, the MDA terms, current status, and then we'll show you the recommendation as well. So this project started back in August 1st, 2019. The city issued a request for proposal for developers to redevelop the 72-acre site. March 17th, 2020, nothing else happened in 2020. But Turner Barringer, which is now Turner Brothers, their proposal was selected. In September 20th, 2022, City Council approved the Master Development Agreement in support of the Floyd Casey redevelopment. November 2nd, 2022, that agreement was executed with Floyd Casey 1 LLC. July 18th, 2023, a town hall meeting was hosted by the Turner Brothers for public input, and July 30th, 2023, project commenced. They began site preparation on the 72 acres. On October 15th, 2024, the Turner Brothers submitted an extension request letter, but in the conversation we had with them, it seemed that we could not verify that the project would be completed by the end of the 180 days that City Manager Ford is authorized to grant, and so we decided to bring it to council for your consideration for an extension. And then just as a reminder, November 2nd, 2024 was the completion date in the executed Master Development Agreement, so the project is currently not in compliance. So here's an overview of the Master Development Agreement terms. The project is $100 million, it requires a $100 million capital investment. I will note 14 million of those dollars are required to be TIF eligible. It's a 72-acre site. It's a mixed-use development, meaning they would create 259 single-family lots, 3 multifamily sites, and 20,000 square foot of commercial space. The total incentive value was $25,450,000. All the incentives are performance-based, so that meaning no money has paid out until the deadlines are complete and met. The TIF grant was up to $19,200,000 for reimbursement of public improvements, an infrastructure grant up to $4 million for reimbursement for the construction of a new hike and bike trail, and an economic development grant of up to $2,250,000, and that's 70% of the sales tax reimbursed after it's paid. And so that was the incentive package. Other considerations, the land was sold to developer for $10, and I think that was just the consideration on the deed. The land value when we swapped with Baylor was $3.2 million. And then Floyd Casey Park is one that we can't talk about this project without the park project, and the city is investing $25.3 million into the new park, which is the largest investment in a park in Waco's history. And so now for the current status on the project, I'll hand it over to Jonathan and let him take it from here.
Thank you. So construction started in 2023, and so just to give you an update on the overall, the single-family residential, we're currently under the horizontal construction. Horizontal construction to us is your utilities, so water, sewer, storm. Currently, we've got all 259 lots under contract with the local builder group. That local builder group has a great reputation in town. They understand the product that we have on this site, and even understand they're working with a local lender to create different types of lending programs and educational programs to teach individuals that are wanting to purchase homes in this site. So somebody that's got the experience and knows what type of project this is for us. Vertical construction is expected to start in early Q2 of 2025. Multifamily, so I think the requirement was 3 multifamily sites. We actually have 4 multifamily pad sites that we're doing. Willowbrook would be 96 units that we should be starting as well sometime next year. And then 3 sites along Dutton Avenue that are currently under contract as well and under the design phase right now. The commercial sites, we've got 3 different commercial sites. We've got our QSR type tenants that would be in Willowbrook, so in front of the apartment complex. We've got Valley Mills 2, where those tenants that we're targeting are going to be more the types of tenants that would support the neighborhood, and then your Dutton site, which would be a larger tenant footprint. Our commercial team is actively looking for tenants for those spaces, but really going to try to find the correct type of tenant for these areas and really gain some interest once vertical construction starts to happen. Just some details on the extensions. So we've worked with the city, with the utilities from the original design, working in the construction portion of it. There have been some changes in water connections, which had some issues with the construction for both your water, storm, and sewer. That design that we have is going to be beneficial to the city's water system. So it's really updating a pressure plane from 32nd Street. And then I think the city also has some projects that are going on around there that updates that pressure plane around the site and then helps loop some of the water lines so that you don't have dead-end lines. To resolve some of the construction delays, we've worked closely with the city staff and utility department and engineering department, and we have routine biweekly meetings. And then now we have a direct streamlined path for any issues that we have. So we don't necessarily wait for those biweekly meetings to have those issues resolved. We have direct phone numbers to the engineers and understanding who needs to help answer questions to get issues resolved in a timely manner. On our side of things, we've added to the construction team. So we've got 2 different dirt crews that are out there. We've got 4 different utility crews working on different phases. We've got some of the scope of work that's typically handled by one contractor. We've split that up, so we've got people that are strictly in charge of curbs and sidewalks, and then another contractor that would be responsible for your lime stabilization and your asphalt. So really just adding to the amount of people that are out there so that we can speed up the time frame and make up some of the lost time that we've got. So just kind of reviewing the MDA agreement. All horizontal construction originally when we had the discussion was for one single phase. That was scheduled to be completed in November of 2024 with an extension, as Jeremy had mentioned, for 180 days that would take us to May of 2025. With the current phased structure that we're looking at, well, currently at the time, with the original MDA agreement, we would not have had any horizontal construction that would have been completed until all of the project was done. So with the phased approach, we would actually be starting residential lots going vertical sooner. So as phase 1 is completed, the builders would start working on going vertical, as well as with the apartment complexes. All of those things will happen earlier than what was originally projected in the MDA agreement. There are sections of that in the later phases that currently, based on our timeline, we're unsure of when they will be done, but really pushing to try to make the May 2025 deadline currently. So we're not sure what phases will not be done, but we will have enough done to where the builder will have enough lots for their takedown schedule to be completed in that time frame. So going through the phasing schedule, phase 1 is your Williams Landing phase. That's the phase where now it allows us to connect to water on the offsite that was at 32nd Street, and then helps to connect to the loop that's now on Dutton. That was other work that was completed, and then just working through the different phases. So current time frame for us is to have phase 1 and finish up, move our crews over to phase 2 and 3. And then kind of work our way to where 2 and 3 go together, have another crew on 4, and really just try to help streamline the phases to get done as fast as we can to that May deadline. So as far as the extension request, our current request is still for the 180-day extension. We are happy to listen to city staff and the recommendations of extending it beyond the 180-day extension. Our plan is to have a better idea of where we're going to fall schedule-wise, so that when we do pick a date as to when the extension should happen, that we're making sure that we're completing it at that time frame, rather than coming back and asking for a longer extension. So we are happy to sit down with city staff. I think their recommendation is for a deadline of November 30th. And so I think there's conversations that we're wanting to have with staff just to listen to their recommendations on that.
And so here I'll present to you the staff recommendation on the project. So our recommendation is to extend the completion date to November 30th, 2025, and then with that extension to add the following amendments. So the term of the existing grants not be extended, meaning it was 15-year terms on the TIF payout as well as the sales tax. And instead of moving those from 2040 to 41, we would keep those where they're at. The caps remain the same. And then add an additional requirement to the MDA for a street or for an additional street name in honor of Hispanic heritage. So they currently have 2 that they have already committed to doing. So this would ask for a total of 3 streets in the development to be named and to honor Hispanic heritage. And then to install antique street lighting and name plaques honoring Hispanic heritage on the developer's portion of the proposed heritage trail. So that is the staff recommendation, and in summary, due to changes in the water connection and construction challenges, the project has been delayed, and what we are asking you to consider, what we are seeking your guidance on today, because we do not have a resolution on the agenda, what we're seeking your guidance on is to consider extending the completion deadline to November 30th, 2025, and add the 3 commitments that I just shared with you to the agreement, and giving us the authority to negotiate those changes. And with that, we will take questions.
I don't have any questions, just comments. As far as the street naming, the Hispanic names,
Alice, get your money.
it was in my way. That we have a committee, a park committee that has been working real hard on coming up with names and honoring our past Hispanic leadership and families that have long been in South Waco. With the help of Jonathan Cook, we've gone and we've worked real hard and we've come a long way. So we're ready anytime you guys are ready. But we're all excited about the development that is happening in South Waco. I've been real excited because I've never had anything that big happen in my district. So it's exciting for me. It's exciting for me to be around the park committee and listening to a lot of history, Hispanic history that I wasn't aware of, and through the naming of the streets. And so I learned a lot, our committee has learned a lot, and we're just waiting on you guys, and we're ready to roll. But we're excited, and thank you for this presentation. I think this is going to benefit not just South Waco, but all of Waco, to have a beautiful place to come to and to see our park and to see the development going on there on a busy street, Valley Mills. But we can handle it and we'll do it. So thank you for this presentation. I'm keeping my eye on you guys, and just to let you know, I pass by there quite a bit on the Dutton Street side, and of course I don't know what you're doing, but I see activity there.
And I would like to add to that, and we really do appreciate the city staff and everybody that's worked so far. We had a great turnout at the town hall event. I don't know that we expected that many individuals to come out and to share the Hispanic heritage. And like you said, it was great to learn of the history there and the individuals that impacted South Waco. So we're excited to just be a part of that. And to help any way that we can to shed some light on those individuals.
Well, thank you, thank you. Thank you to the staff. Thank you, Jonathan Cook, for all your help as well. I know we've kind of made you pull your hair out at times, but thank you for your help.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Garza and Mr. Presini for the presentation. Mr. Garza, I appreciate your work and the Turner Brothers' work on getting this project moved along. I really commend y'all on when it looked like we were starting to run behind a little bit, that you went to this bi-weekly meeting, both from the city side and the Turner side, and Mr. Garza, your side. All of us are trying to pull together to make this work. And I know it's a $100 million investment. It's a big project. It's really kind of a showcase for what Councilmember Rodriguez just said, for 259 lots, kind of in an urban environment with commercial parts there too. Just everybody's excited about this. We are, the TIF grants and the grants on this deal, we're very focused on how those work, and this council, tries to make sure that everybody's working in the same direction and trying to meet deadlines, just like we talked about TxDOT a little bit ago. And we want to make any extension we do, we want to make sure it works for everybody. So I had a couple questions on the original phase one was November, now, right? That was for everything, all of the horizontal work to be completed?
Correct. So so that's perfect right there. So that was originally all of one phase. So all of it was supposed to be completed at once. There was no lots that we were turning over earlier. And just having conversations with our team and with the city, it felt like it would be beneficial to everybody to see vertical construction. And as Councilwoman Rodriguez has stated as well, you drive by the site, not really sure what's happening, but you do know what's happening once things go vertical. So with the phased approach, it allows us to have vertical construction and for individuals to really see the progress that's happening. as opposed to just looking like we're playing in the dirt
And
right
so
now.
then we've, which you certainly aren't. I've been by there too. You guys are doing a lot of work. I appreciate it. And I think that there was a clause that would allow the city manager, but I thank the city manager for bringing it back in here to let us take a look at it, because he could have extended 180 days. But we're gonna have to we think phase one, this wasn't phased in the first deal. So we wanna phase it out. As you say, it makes sense to get vertical, to get going on the lots. So we're thinking in phase one would require 180, but certainly not all 6 phases would be done in 180 days, right? I mean,
And that's where we're trying to figure out, once we get past phase 1 and 2, we really should be able to open it up, and that's where we've been working closely with the city staff, engineers, and utilities, and really going through the items that were happening in phase 1 and 2. And so I think by adding extra crews, it really allows us to get to that point. I think based on our timing and our estimates, we should have dirt work and utilities completed by May for all of those. What I'm trying to figure out from our concrete and paving crews is how far are we going to be in that process. So our goal is to try to have as much done. Again, we want to be completed on this project as soon as possible. So us requesting an extension is not to just buy some more time for us. We want to get it done, but at this moment, I don't know what the exact timing for each phase is, and so I just figured that the 180 days gives us the ability to get to that point to where we know when we come back, this is, if it's not completed, these are going to be the deadlines, and this is when it'll be completed, as opposed to requesting an extension and hoping that we hit it and then having to come back again.
okay.
Mayor, if you don't mind for a second, and this is really a kind of philosophical question. You know, Jonathan's perspective, I think, works, but I know there's been times on other projects where extension conversations, the council wants, from a policy standpoint, to have one conversation, and has advised me to handle things in that manner. So that's where you see the kind of the difference between the 180 days. We're going to know a lot more in the next month or so from Mr. Garza and the team. But where staff is driving to is we want to set one date and have the Turners beat it, maybe by a long shot. But so that we're not coming back to the council and having multiple extension conversations. Because I know in the course of other projects, that's been perhaps frustrating for the council. So that's where you see the difference between the two, the 180 days versus a year. Again, we'll take your advice on that and work with the Turners as we need to from a staff standpoint.
Yeah, thanks for that input, City Manager Ford. That makes sense, because we started this back in November 2022, 2 years in. You know, it looks like we're kind of starting getting caught back up now, but I see where it makes sense, just so we're not picking up, as we say in the corporate world, we're not picking up the box 14 times on extending this. And I don't know if we put parts where in this extension, can we still say phase 1 would be completed by May? Or we can work out the details. I guess that's not in a vote today, but we're just talking about it. But it might be such that we would have phase 1. Yeah, let's get phase 1 done, and we go ahead and do the whole year on the rest of it.
For the remainder. I mean, I think that those types of things are helpful feedback. And that's something that we can work with Jonathan and the team on. Certainly, there's no doubt, I guess in the last 4 months or so, there's been a whole lot of progress.
Yeah.
And if you are watching the site, there's been a lot going on. So I feel good about the trajectory, right, of getting there, but the words in the document are going to matter,
Yeah.
right? So, Councilmember Bearfield, you were about to say something.
November 25th, what will I see?
You should have a completed project, you know, after we go through discussions, I guess, and see what other items are wanting to add. As City Manager Ford was saying, as we work through the discussions and as the trajectory has been going, we seem to have worked through the communication issues with the city and knowing who to answer questions with. So as long as there's no delays as what we've seen in the past, then we should, by far try to exceed that expectation of being completed.
For phase 1?
for the project.
Okay. Just
And just so
making
we're
sure.
clear, that's the horizontal, that's the stuff under the
So-
ground
Yeah.
so-
and
so
the
the-
concrete on it, and maybe some homes started,
Yeah,
right?
so the main thing, I think, in this whole project has always been vertical construction.
Yeah.
The reimbursements and everything is based off of vertical construction. So, even as we talk through, and I guess I kind of approach the 180-day thing, we will have vertical construction happening earlier with the phase approach than we would have if we'd done this all as one phase. Come May, you'll have more stuff going vertical. We should have a larger tax basis come November because of the amount of houses that should be going up. If there's delays beyond the May deadline, it would just be, these later phases. As you can see from a lot standpoint, those, the last phase is really just a smaller lot count. There's these smaller lots, and so we should be able to get most of these things completed. But again, that's us continuing to work as a team and really try to streamline that process. And as things have been going the last 4 months, it should continue to project that way.
You covered most of my question with the question you asked there, Councilwoman Bearfield. Just with the sort of the big rocks that have been the way up to this point that have led to the need for an extension, you feel really confident that those have been addressed and we're able to move forward now, set the plan in place, at least between now and when this comes back for a vote to, as City Manager Ford said, get sort of, one hard deadline and work within that.
Yeah, we can have those discussions and work through that. I think the from the MDA agreement, a lot of times when you get into these agreements, the time frame is best case scenario, and let's try to hit these deadlines. I think that's what the 180-day extension is typically for these types of hurdles that happen along the way. And certainly a project of this size and this magnitude, there was going to be something along the way, and we weren't sure what it was going to be. And so that's what those extensions typically are for. But I think that with the Turner's reputation and the previous projects that they've done, you guys understand that their goal is to create something great for South Waco and for the city of Waco. So we'll do everything we can to try to make that happen for you guys.
Appreciate that. Yeah, I hope that you and the Turners feel that the council is supportive of this project. Obviously, it's large investment, not only financially, but socially and culturally for Waco and South Waco specifically to see this come to fruition. And also was historically the site of Floyd Casey, so it's cool to see it not just be an empty lot, and we're really excited for it, but really want to see it get done. And I have had this thought recently of city incentives and the way that we operate with them, and the incentive piece is it is there to incentivize, right? So we want to incentivize timely completion and at a quality that we feel good about. I've got no doubt, based on what I know of the partners that are involved in this at this point and going forward, that we'll be able to see that. So I appreciate you guys coming and presenting this today, and look forward to taking it to a vote in January.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Thanks again, Mr. Garza, I appreciate it, and Mr. Pacino also. Just, and thanks to the Turner Brothers. There's so much to like about this project. It's a city trying to address our housing challenges here in town by kind of getting this land into a housing development in a cool part of the city, and kind of reinvigorating that part of town. And that part alone is exciting. And we've got a local developer. You guys are getting this thing done. We've got local builders building these houses. We've got a brand new park going in right next to it, the biggest, most beautiful park we've ever worked on in the history of the city. So this is really a key project, and I appreciate everybody working together to figure out next steps and to get this thing vertical. We all want to see houses out there. I know the builders want to see houses, and I appreciate the teamwork on this deal. But thanks so much for the presentation. Anything else? All right, thanks, guys. The next item is work session 2024-983, City Manager Ford.
Our next work session, we're going to invite the team from Prosper Waco up. We've got Jessica Addis as well as Dr. Jeremy Rhodes coming up to give an overview of the 2024 Prosper Waco Snapshot Report. Yes, thank you, Jeremy. Some of the council will recognize some of this information from, from a recent forum that Prosper Waco hosted. And Mayor and other council members suggested it. It's really good information and would be helpful to be shared more broadly. And so looking forward to the presentation and hopefully a little media coverage of it because it's really quality work. So Jessica, you up first?
Thank you so much, Mr. City Manager, Mayor, council members. Thank you for the invitation to be here today to share this report. I'd like to let you know I'm going to take a page from TxDOT's fine example of Stan and Clayton, and we're going to deliver this project presentation ahead of schedule today. You know, one of the roles of Prosper Waco, when we think about our core functions, is to serve as a data resource and hub for our community. We're so grateful to have Dr. Rhodes' leadership, and with his leadership and expertise, to really help our community to translate data to actionable insights. This 2024 Waco Snapshot Reports really provides a comprehensive overview of key indicators across some of our community sectors, from our economy, health outcomes, education, as well as overall community well-being. It is by no means exhaustive, and we really, in our presentation today, as you'll see, does not cover everything even in the snapshot report. Moving forward, our plan is to produce this report biannually. Sometimes the data doesn't change enough from year to year, and so we'll be doing an update this in 2026, and would invite, if you're interested, or if there is something that we didn't include or that you would all like to see, to keep an eye on as a community, welcome your input as to that. So with that, I'll kick it over to Dr. Rhodes to walk us through a select set of slides, and we are leaving a little bit of time at the end to answer any questions or get any feedback that you may have. So again, thank you for the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you. So let's kick it off. Just want to go over some of the, like Jessica said, we presented this data at our summit about 6 weeks ago, something like that. And so if you were there, you're going to remember some of this. For those of you who won't, I'll go through it, at least a summary of it. So one of the points I want to make before we get started is that I believe that any sort of presentation of data has to have context. Data doesn't mean anything without context. If I tell you our poverty rate is 23%, that doesn't mean anything unless I tell you what it used to be this, or in this neighborhood it's that, or among this population it's this, right? That's when the numbers start to mean something. And so in the document, there are charts comparing change over time, comparing our Waco city averages to the average of our peer cities, to the state averages, sometimes peer counties. When possible, we break it down by racial and ethnic groups and break it down using a map, breaking it down by neighborhood to see how these metrics vary across our city. Most of what we have in the document is city-level data. There are a few exceptions, but most of it is city-level data. It is intentionally broad and cross-sector, so we want those who are experts in health are not going to learn anything from the pages on health, but they're going to hopefully learn a lot from the pages on housing. And so we want to have something there for everyone. And in all cases, the data is the most recent available at the time of publication, which of course is not necessarily true anymore, because there was some data that came out last week, but that was too soon for me to change. So here you have, I like to provide this as sort of some context. This is what's called a redlining map. This is from 1932, or 34, I forget, one of the two. For most of the 20th century, up until the Fair Housing Act of 1968, it was common and normal for banks to make decisions about lending based on the racial makeup of the community. Areas that were predominantly black or Hispanic were considered high-risk areas and considered unwise to lend to folks who wanted to buy a house or start a business. And so this is a redlining map of Waco. And so you can see there, East Waco is mostly pink. Pink is the sort of like beware, don't lend to people in this community color. Okay? And so East Waco at this point, and a good chunk of South Waco are considered risky investments. And then North Waco, where you have blues and the sort of teal color, where you have, at the time, more predominantly white populations were considered safe bets. I wanted to say this in part because, for those who are not from Waco, this helps to contextualize why we call East Waco, right? When you look at a map, it's like, why is East Waco north of North Waco? This doesn't make any sense. And so showing this map helps to contextualize that, but also kind of sets a stage for the maps that you see throughout the document. This is the same map that is on every page of that report that you have in front of you, just with different colors. So let's start off with a few key indicators. This is a change in total population over a 10-year period from 2013 to 2022. And you can see in a good chunk of East Waco and North Waco, we see population declines. A good chunk of South Waco, we see population increase. And of course, a lot of the kind of outside, suburban areas and right outside the city limits, we see mostly population growth as well. This is one that I think people are pretty interested in. This shows, for people who moved to McLennan County in that particular year, where did they come from? The green bar represents the percentage of folks who moved into our county from another county in Texas. The red is folks who moved into our county from another state outside of Texas. And the blue is those who moved into our county from another country. And one of the things I want to point out here is that you see the proportion, the green is the proportion who moved from another county, and that declines. In 2015, we saw 70% of the new folks in our county came from within Texas. And in 2022, that's down to 57%. And that is made up for by the two colors at the top. In 2015, a quarter of the new residents in McLennan County came from another state. And in 2022, 36% of them came from another state. And then we see almost doubling of those who come from overseas as well. 4.3% of the new folks to our county were from another country in 2015, and 2022 is 7.1%. So McLennan County is growing, and one of the primary drivers of that growth is people coming from outside of Texas and from outside of the United States. And of course, that red number, the state that is sending the most new residents to McLennan County, is California. I know that's not a shock to anyone. It's about 15% of the out-of-state folks. At least in 2022, 15% of the new out-of-state folks came from California. I believe the number 2 state was Colorado, if I remember. Now let's look at some numbers related to income and poverty. The blue bars represent Waco, our median income, and most recently at $47,421. The gray line represents our peer cities, the average of the 10 peer cities. And by the way, the 10 peer cities, that's taken from the document that was published about, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago. The 2040 comprehensive report that was published lists 10 cities, and those are the 10 cities that I included in this as well. And the orange line represents the state average. So the good news here is that we see consistently improving incomes. And the bad news is we see continuing gaps between Waco and our peer cities. Pretty significant gaps, I would say. We'll unpack that a little bit here in a second. This shows the median income broken down throughout neighborhoods. These are actually census tracts in the Waco area. It's, no matter how many times I look at this map, I'm always a little surprised to see areas with, $19,000 median income. I think it's important to remember that an area with a median income of $19,000 means that half the people in that tract make less than $19,000 a year as a household. And then, just 4 miles to the southwest, we see median incomes of over $100,000. Of course, this is a story we see in every city in this country, but I think it's helpful to see it kind of painted here to see where those disparities are. This is our poverty rate. In 2022, 24.8% of the folks in Waco, in the Waco city limits, were in households that had incomes below the poverty line. This is a significant gap. We have higher poverty rates than our peer cities at 17.4%, and then a state average at 14%. One of the questions, though, Mayor Holmes, you may remember when we had the combined city-county meeting a few weeks ago, you asked this question. The question is, how does the presence of Baylor affect our poverty rates? So the presence of Baylor does affect our poverty rates. It inflates our poverty rates because the presence of Baylor means we have a substantial population of young adults who are not working because they choose to not work because they are full-time students and they may be supported by their families or supported by financial aid or whatever. And so those folks are technically considered zero-income households. And so those folks are technically considered under the poverty line. Some of those folks are suffering the kinds of hardships we associate with poverty, many are not. And so to include those folks in our poverty rate does sort of artificially inflate our poverty rate. And so Mayor Holmes asked last time, can we, for the sake of the analysis, can we delete the undergrad students out of the analysis and see how it affects our comparison with our peer cities? And so you see that middle column there, the 2023 poverty rate for all residents. Ours was 24.3% and our peer cities was 16.2% with an 8-point gap, meaning our poverty rate was 8 points higher. If the presence of college students was a significant cause of that gap, then we would see that number decline substantially when we remove college students from the analysis. In the right column, that's what we did. We removed all college students from the analysis, all undergrad college students from the analysis. And you can see Waco's poverty rate went down from 24 to 20%, and our peer cities went from 16 down to 13%. But the gap didn't change that much. It went from 8.1 points to 7.6 points. So what that means is the gap whoops, that's not what I want to do. The gap you see here between Waco and our peer cities is not caused by the fact that Waco is a college town with a large proportion of college students.
Jeremy, could I ask, assuming based on the way this is presented, you controlled for college students in the peer cities as well?
Yes.
When you did that. I would imagine this is, to your point of controlling for Baylor's student population, Baylor itself is not a large undergraduate body when compared to peer cities that may have public universities in them, right? So when you control that out, it's 10, 15,000 students versus sometimes 20, 30, 40. A&M's got like 80, that you're controlling for there. So I would imagine that plays into this as well. I just wanted to make sure that was controlled for with the peer cities. So
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, and our peer cities include some college towns like Bryan and College Station and Lubbock. Those are have larger college populations than we do. So removing from all of those cities combined, still gives us that substantial gap.
Yeah.
And then here we have the poverty rate by race and ethnicity. And so going back here, look here, the poverty rate goes down overall from 29% down to 25% over this, about an 8-year period. But when we break it down by race, we see different stories. The red color represents our Hispanic population. We have a good story there. We have a steady decline from 32% down to 22%. Our white population is represented by the blue color. That's fairly flat, but a slight decrease. The Asian population is represented by green. You see it go down and then go up. And the black population is represented by orange. And we see a pretty persistent increase in the poverty rate among our black residents in Waco, which is a pretty disturbing finding, I think.
Would this also include, so in charting these over time, let's say a household received received a good job that we've been working on in economic development and moved out of the city of Waco, but within McLennan County to say Hewitt or Robinson, China Spring, La Vega, or Belmead, would that household be removed from this chart?
That would be removed from the chart.
So if we see intra-county upward mobility, that would not be accounted for here. So what this hopes for is that people stay in their current households, in their current jurisdictions. Is that fair?
In the current city, yeah.
That's correct. Okay, thank you.
And the poverty rate broken down by neighborhoods. You see that in parts of East Waco, 40, 50, 60%. Parts of North Waco, we see over 50%. And then, some of the other areas out, like Woodway, Hewitt, you see only 4, 8%, something like that. I want to point out that area around Baylor, you can see 67%, 63%, 56%. A big, kind of the northwest corner of that 56% is all Baylor student housing. So some of the high numbers you see in parts of South Waco are also related to the presence of Baylor and the student housing that you see around there. Another way to get rid of remove college students from the analysis is to look at child poverty. And we see a similar story. The good news is it's getting better. The bad news is it's staying much worse than our peer cities. About 29% of our children in our city live in households with incomes below the poverty line, compared to about 20% of those in our peer cities. And when you break that down by race, you see a similar sort of story that is, I think, equally disturbing. For our Hispanic children, it's an improvement. For our white children, it's an improvement. For our black children, it's getting worse. So that in 2022, about 57% of the black children in our city live in households with incomes below the poverty line. Okay, our next section is housing. This shows the ratio of home price to housing income. This is basically how expensive is housing as it relates to income. You can see in 2015, the median home cost about 4.1 times more than the income, and that slowly goes up, so that in 2022, the median home is 5.2 times larger than the median income. And comparing us to our peer cities and the state of Texas, it's higher, which means housing is less affordable in Waco than it is in our peer cities and than it is in the state averages. We see similar increases in our rent. This one is one where we can smile a little bit. We see even though the rent has gone up, our rent is lower in our peer cities and of course in the state of Texas. And then this is a map showing the location of the rent. So you can see that can vary from as low as $600 in some parts of the city to as high as $1,700, I guess I see in part of Woodway there. I think that's probably the largest one. And health. At Prosper Waco, a lot of our conversations around health are also conversations about law enforcement, because our law enforcement officers at the Waco Police Department, at the Sheriff's Office, have to kind of be the backstop for a lot of the mental health problems that we have in our community. And so this shows the number of crisis calls monthly that come into our dispatch that are mental health related. And the red number shows back in February of this year, they started a program trying to divert by staffing social workers who can help connect folks to resources. And so we definitely hope to see that red bar start to go up as that program continues to be refined. This is the percentage of inmates in the county jail who either have been prescribed psychiatric meds or have received a psychiatric mental health evaluation. The blue line represents the meds. You can see about a third of the folks in our jails have been prescribed psychiatric meds. This can be the sort of the common SSRIs like Zoloft, or it can be the hard stuff, right? The lithium, that kind of stuff, anti-hallucinogens, anti-mood stabilizers, things like that. And about 2/3 of our folks received a mental health evaluation because they were considered to be in crisis. We see numbers going up. The percentage of folks in our city that report having frequent mental distress goes up over this time period, and it is higher than our peer cities. And this is how those folks are mapped out. I think it's interesting to note that you see higher rates of mental distress around Baylor and up around TSTC. So you see that that's going to be, at least somewhat related to the stress of being a college student. And food insecurity numbers have kind of, gone up and then down, and it's around 17% of the folks in our city have food insecurity, which means they don't have consistent access to healthy and culturally appropriate food. And this is that same thing but mapped out. You see that in parts of East Waco and kind of the Brook Oaks area of North Waco and kind of the sort of the Sanger Heights part of North Waco is where you see higher numbers there.
Dr. Woods, can I just ask, tell me a little more about food insecurity and how that's determined?
That's a good question. So these numbers come from the Central Texas Food Bank. They are they pull from a number of different data sources to determine food insecurity. So some of it is surveys in which they ask people about their budget and about how much money they're spending on food, and it sort of becomes a ratio of how much money you're spending on food to how much money you're bringing in. It's a fairly complicated measure that I would have to learn a little bit more about to be able to give you a full answer. But it is not as simple. It's not a simple measure.
I do think it's important to note that for every year since 2019, food insecurity has shown up as the top health challenge on the community health needs assessments done by our hospitals and our federally qualified health agency because of we know that when people are food insecure, the health outcomes, they have lower health outcomes, higher diabetes, obesity, all of the things. So this is a really important one to keep our eye on.
And we know that one of the most proven solutions for fighting food insecurity is getting people enrolled in SNAP benefits, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, what we used to call food stamps. And you can see that, and this is a trend we see all over the state, that of the folks who are eligible to receive SNAP benefits, only about half of them actually receive the SNAP benefits. So there are a number of community partners in our area that are really invested in that particular problem, finding ways to get more folks signed up for SNAP, which we know will really help. All right, a few conclusions here. Where do we see improvements overall? Well, the poverty rates and the child poverty rates overall see improvements. We see increases in income. A lot of our indicators of economic development, which I did not include in this presentation, but are in the document itself, and some of the educational attainment goes up. Things are getting worse when it comes to housing affordability, teacher turnover, and mental distress, and areas where we see significant gaps. Income and poverty, as we said, vary significantly between neighborhoods and very significantly between racial and ethnic groups. The race gap in child poverty has gone up over this period. Food insecurity is pretty unevenly distributed throughout the community. And health outcomes, like maternal outcomes and life expectancy, vary, and that's also in the, not in this presentation, but is in the booklet, very significantly by race and ethnicity. So I'm happy to take any questions that y'all might have.
Any questions, comments?
Yeah, I really appreciate this, and it does tell a nuanced story about our community and an important one. And I'm wondering if, when this report is made the next time, if we could also do a comparison with the county, which, just like the maps, catches the region. I think, for example, in my district, I've got a lot of Waco residents that live just across the street from Woodway residents, and a lot of Waco residents that live just across the street from Hewitt residents. And part of, for example, Midway ISD's story is it's becoming more diverse as, in some cases, Waco inside the loop citizens elect to move into a different school district. Sometimes that's in their own jurisdiction in the city of Waco. Sometimes it's in Hewitt, sometimes it's in Woodway. But it would also be interesting to just see county-wide, side-by-side, for some of the demographic groups as a point of comparison, because oftentimes people move out as they move up, if that makes sense to you. But thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And similarly, if any of you have suggestions, like Councilmember Borderoot, about what could be helpful for future reports, please tell us.
And I'm sure.
I'll just note quickly that, as always, super impressed with the level of sort of fine detail that goes into the data you bring before us. I know it is not easy to get all of this and then compile it, and you present it to us, and we ask for one or two extra things that I'm sure aren't as easy as just a control function in Excel. So I'm really thankful for it. I think it definitely. I don't know that there's any necessarily surprises in this for me, but it certainly is helpful in telling a story and providing really good context, as you mentioned, to allow for improvement in these areas. So really appreciate the work you guys do.
Thank you, Jessica and Jeremy, for sharing, this good report. I'm kind of familiar with it. And I'm very excited about the presentation of this particular document, and that it is made available in this way and seen both at Commissioner's Court and at City Council, so that we can have an active document, like a data Bible for our residents and our community. This is a tool in order for us to make decisions and set policy that we know how it will affect the people who are the most or the least of us. And that information is, the one thing about data is it's pure. So regardless of how it makes you feel, the data is the data. And so then we can now make decisions on how we make changes to affect the data, if it affects the way you feel. So how do we do better by and for our Wacoans? I think that looking at this from 2015 is telling. I am glad that our poverty numbers have decreased. However, I can look back and look at the time and look at how I know for this body, the things that began happening that maybe weren't happening before. And I dare say that affected that change. how we made economic development decisions, how we decided that, you know, just enough is not just enough. And we have intentionally set parameters and made decisions. We want all the large businesses and high-paying jobs to come into our community because our citizens, our residents need it. But, you know, with that, we had to say, but it's going to take this, because we won't move the needle at all if we don't forcibly move it. And so this is helpful to us to continue with what we do. I look forward to the report in 26. I know that from the summit, there were a plethora of things that could be added that we didn't think to look for and look about, but I know with Dr. Rose due diligence, we'll be able to do that come the 26 report. And I dare say for our community that are watching, our staff that is here, if in these data points, if it's something you don't see, literally let Jessica and Dr. Rose know. Because that's the only way we'll be able to dig deeper and find. Because this information has allowed us to go and find programs that will be beneficial for our community, to go and find pathways in workforce development and engaging our opportunity youth. I mean, it has done those things, and so that's how we can continue to do them, is by and for this data. So I'm grateful for that for you, and I look forward to hearing more from you. It tickles me to death because Dr. Rose is a quiet dude, but you put the data on point, and he's like, da, 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 and I love it. I love to see it, and I love to hear, and want to see more of it.
Such
so.
a great impression of me.
Dr. Rhodes is right up here.
Right. So, but I look forward to more, and thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mayor, if you don't mind, before you hop in and close us out, what is the platform that Prosper Waco is pursuing around engaging in solutions relative to some of these significant gaps? So let's focus on these significant gaps, and where do we need to? The city can't solve every problem.
That's right.
We've got our own significant gaps, we'll call them, but we do want to be engaged in part of solutions. And your data presents a need for some compelling solutions. So what is Prosper Waco, where are you engaged, and can you spend a couple minutes talking about that?
I'll take a first crack at it, yeah. So I think that as Prosper Waco has evolved over, next year we'll be celebrating 10 years of existence. And we have really tried I have the honor of serving as the organization's third executive leader of really, and the board tasked me with really focusing on the major levers. And so we have really tried to recognize that we can't be all things to all people. And so where can we work with our partners to help drive systems level change? I think it's also recognizing that as a backbone organization, as a collective impact organization, our role is to facilitate work of partners, but not be on the front lines doing the work ourselves. So not enrolling people in SNAP, but helping to drive messaging, targeted digital marketing messaging, community-wide messaging, talking points that partners across the spectrum can use to disseminate on where to go to enroll in SNAP. So we are really focusing, our bodies of work right now are focused on the teacher pipeline, so the presence of high-quality teachers, which we know is one of the key indicators of student success. So we've been working deeply with MCC, Tarleton, Texas Tech, and Waco ISD and La Vega ISDs in that work. You all know that the workforce development is my kind of passion project, and we're really, really pleased and excited to facilitate work with MCC and TSDC on reskilling and upskilling and supporting development of pathways. I'm really, we just had lunch with our partners and friends at TSDC, and we're discussing a new layer that we had identified was a barrier, and they are now are building in an assessment tool on the front end to help place the student. So it's exciting to me. It's like that small kind of thing that's an example of systems change, that we're changing the way that we all work collectively in order to better serve the students. But we're seeing a huge increase in the number of students. Prosper Waco writes grants, and we solicit funds to scholarship students. So we have supported, I think, over 150 students this year in completing short-term workforce credentials, certificates of value, industry-based credentials with TSTC and MCC. So that's really exciting. Housing and homelessness, really our homelessness initiative is nascent. And then, of course, health and behavioral health. The behavioral health leadership team is kind of our core body of work. So it really, as Dr. Rhodes mentioned, really law enforcement is a really key part of that. How do we divert individuals from law enforcement to get officers back in the role of public safety? Even thinking about that slide of the number of individuals incarcerated on psychiatric, on medications, it's significantly more expensive for them to be to jail or to house a person with experiencing a mental health crisis. I think it's like $121 per day versus $80 per day, maybe. Don't quote me on that, but so those are kind of our core bodies of work right now. And I think that, again, we see our role is, one, to be a resource to community partners to help inform policy and also strategic investments, so our community partners know where do we want to make investments, because I do think the data shows a compelling story of progress, but not everyone has been enjoying that progress equitably and in the same way. So how do we, and then the other piece of the role that we play is helping to identify those evidence-driven best practices. So if we want to move the needle with X, going and doing the research, our team, to identify a strategy that will help us get the results as a community that we want. So I don't know if that answers your question.
I think it's a great start, and I think it's, as Councilmember Bearfield and others highlight, there's so much compelling information or data here that really compels and requires a community response. Like, I don't think anybody can sit in here and watch that and look at that and say, that's somebody else's problem. And so I just appreciate y'all bringing it, and I appreciate the convening you're doing to find solutions with our partners, and we certainly want to be part of that conversation.
Thank you very much. I realized I didn't mention our hunger-free work, and the food insecurity is a really central part of the health work. And so grateful we have our deputy city manager participates in that work, and we're really excited. I think that group actually meets tomorrow, and we're talking about many grants to partner organizations to do mobile food distributions, and enrollment's an exciting thing. So we're really grateful for the partnerships and the opportunity to be a part of the great work happening in our community.
Thank you, Ms. Addison, Dr. Rhodes, I appreciate it. I'm a data geek too, and I've already gushed over you several times on this thing, so I appreciate context, trend analysis, that's everything. And also salute you on, because I had that specific question that you distilled on the poverty rate, and that's the first time I've seen it in, 10 years I've been talking about it, so thank you for that. But appreciate y'all's work.
Thank you, Mayor.
Next item is work session 2024-984. City Manager Bradley Ford, will you introduce the next speaker?
Yes, sir. It'd be my honor. 984 is a discussion of our current and proposed processes for acquiring public art and recommendations regarding the Public Arts Advisory Committee. We've got Amanda Dyer coming up, is at the table. She's our Beautification Arts and Culture Program Manager, and she'll provide an update on this important work, and look forward to her presentation.
Thank you, City Manager Ford. Good afternoon, Mayor and members of Council. I'm here today to share with you an update on the development of policy and procedures for the acquisition of public art for the City of Waco. I'll begin with some background on the development of the city's public art collection and where we are today. Then I'll provide information on a proposed artwork acquisition policy and walk you through the process steps, and then I'll review related recommendations for moving forward, and then lastly, I'll share some next steps before taking any questions that you might have. Many successful projects have been realized individually rather than through a unified strategy for collections growth. And some of those projects that you might recognize are Branding the Brazos, the Doris Miller Memorial, the Waco Sculpture Zoo, and the new artwork at the Waco Regional Airport. Artwork acquisitions are currently considered only through the purchasing policy and the donation acceptance policy. And those policies don't really address the nuanced considerations regarding public art and how it can benefit the city. A previous council was forward-thinking and established the Public Arts Advisory Committee back in 2010, but it is currently inactive. And then the City of Waco Public Art Strategic Plan, which was presented to council in December 2022, recommends the implementation of a standardized process for accepting public art into the city's collection. So we have had many successful public art projects that have been achieved as a result of a commitment from the City Council, strong and trusted partnerships, and through community collaboration and support. The Public Art Strategic Plan was developed to serve as a roadmap for how to create a standardized, systematic process for growing the city's collection. And that will help with planning for the future and also in supporting council's strategic goals of facilitating economic development, creating a culture of equity and inclusion, and enhancing quality of life. While public art is meant to be creative and iterative, a standardized process will help us with adherence to goals and outcomes that are identified within that strategic plan. And that's important today because standardized policy and procedures will ensure a clear means by which the city can acquire artwork regardless of how it is made available, be that through purchase, through donation, loan, or bequest, and will outline the process for which artwork proposals may be reviewed and accepted or rejected by the city. So currently, with the introduction of the Beautification Arts and Culture Division, the artwork acquisition process begins with the contract with Creative Waco to serve as a project administrator for public art projects. All projects that are proposed are reviewed by city management before being recommended to City Council for approval. The development of an artwork acquisition policy and procedures will support the following 4 goals: providing uniform procedures for the review and acceptance of acquisitions and loans of works of art for the city, establishing consistent review criteria that strikes an appropriate balance between quality, high aesthetic standards, and city business use, maintaining high artistic standards in works of art that are displayed by the city, and encouraging and facilitating cooperation with and recognition of the artistic community. The proposed artwork acquisition policy will provide guidelines for all methods of artwork acquisition. Those can be commissioning of new artwork, the purchase of existing artwork, donation, bequest, or loans. Additionally, the policy will also provide guidance on consistent evaluation of any potential acquisition using the following criteria: aesthetics, site, installation, maintenance, financial, safety and liability, timeliness, and then any other special considerations. The acquisitions process would be coordinated by Beautification Arts and Culture staff, who would ensure that a proposal is complete and complies with all council-adopted policies, city codes and ordinances, and with the Public Art Strategic Plan. Acquisitions that are valued at $50,000 or greater and/or are proposed for a prominent location will require approval of City Council. Other artworks below the $50,000 threshold and not in a prominent location, such as a signal box program, will be approved by a council-appointed body. And then donations of artwork will either require maintenance and repairs at no cost to the city or a contribution to a new public art fund to support ongoing maintenance. This diagram outlines the high-level steps that will be followed for each potential artwork acquisition. So the process will begin with the identification of an opportunity. Beautification Arts and Culture staff will discuss a potential project with project stakeholders and to work to determine a budget and a timeline. The second step is a contract with the Public Arts Administrator, which Creative Waco serves in this role. And at that point, if the contract is valued at over $50,000, or $50,000 or more, excuse me, it would be approved by City Council. In steps 3 and 4, the Beautification Arts and Culture staff supports Creative Waco in working with an Arts and Culture Commission to develop a solicitation, which would be an RFP or an RFQ, and Creative Waco would coordinate the acceptance and evaluation of any proposals. In step 5, all artworks would go to an Arts and Culture Commission for approval. Artworks that are valued at $50,000 or greater or are proposed for a prominent location will be recommended for approval by City Council in that 5B step. After approvals, Creative Waco would then contract with the artist and monitor and facilitate fabrication and installation with support from Beautification Arts and Culture staff. And then lastly, after the artwork is accepted by the City of Waco, BAC staff would facilitate the formal transfer of the legal title of the artwork to the city and manage the use of the artwork from that point forward. So staff does recommend that council adopt an artwork acquisition policy that would address the recommendation for systematic approach to collections growth as outlined in the Public Art Strategic Plan, which would balance council approval of public art acquisitions with that of a council-appointed body, supporting the appropriate oversight as the collections grows beyond the current capacity. Staff also recommends reactivation of the Public Arts Advisory Committee. The committee was adopted in 2010 and is currently inactive. Staff would work to assess the scope, the decision-making authority, and the membership of the body and return to the Boards and Commissions Committee with recommended changes and activation. Reactivation and change in scope of the committee would align with the Public Art Strategic Plan and allows the committee to make decisions about public art projects that do not require City Council approval. And of course, we welcome any feedback today from Council regarding both of these recommendations. So I do want to highlight a key change that will be proposed, that is being proposed to the artwork approval process. So currently, City Council approves all artwork. But this recommended policy moving forward would enable the Arts and Culture Commission to recommend to City Council the approval of artworks valued at $50,000 or greater, or those proposed for prominent locations. The Arts and Culture Commission would have final approval on artworks below $50,000 in value and not proposed for a prominent location. So this workflow reflects the recommended process. BAC staff would still contract with Creative Waco as the administrator for public art projects. And then Creative Waco would work directly with a project review committee that would be made up of stakeholders that includes the department director associated with the proposed location or their designee, as well as the council member of the district where the artwork is planned or their designee, and up to one other member of council or their designee. This ensures that all projects will have council input. The project review committee's artwork recommendation would be presented to the Arts and Culture Commission, who would either approve artworks valued at less than $50,000 and not proposed for a prominent location, or the commission would submit a recommendation for final approval to City Council for artworks valued at $50,000 or greater and or proposed for a prominent location. So in summary, updates to the scope and makeup of the Public Art Advisory Committee are recommended. These would address recommendations in the Public Art Strategic Plan and would provide opportunity for a council-appointed body to make final decisions about public art projects that do not require council approval. Also, the adoption of an artwork acquisition policy is recommended and via resolution, and that would standardize the guidelines and processes for all stakeholders. So moving forward, in January and February, staff will request that the Boards and Commissions Committee consider recommended changes in scope, authority, and makeup of the existing Public Arts Advisory Committee, including a change to an Arts and Culture Commission. Then, pending council direction, staff will return to City Council in spring of 2025 to codify these committee changes in the form of an ordinance and begin the appointment process, followed by a recommendation to approve the artwork acquisition policy. So thank you for your time this afternoon. I look forward to your feedback, and I'm available to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions from the council?
I have two really quick questions. Was the Public Arts Advisory Committee ever activated? I mean, I know it was put, did it ever do anything?
Yeah, well, I have been digging around and finding some information that it's on file with the city. Were a few meetings, there were initial appointments, but I have not found a lot of information. I'm still looking, though.
And to clarify, that's the same thing you're proposing as the Arts and Culture Commission, not two different
Yes, we're proposing
bodies.
that it be shifted from one
Gotcha.
type of body to another, but it would be the same body that has already been established.
And I guess question for Acting City Attorney Kathy Perdon. This would be a Arts and Culture Commission because certain actions that it takes are not subject to council review. Is that right? Essentially, it acts on its own in certain aspects.
I think that we're still working with Amanda to work all of the details out and then bring it to boards and commissions.
Okay, so we'll see more of a final product at that time. Okay.
I
sounds good.
assume it'll have the similar legs to the Convention Visitors Bureau and the power that the commission has with their grant-making body as a, because it's 50, under 50 that we can do independently without council. So I assume it will be along those lines, maybe.
Yes, that is what my understanding, that is one of the bodies that we have kind of formulated this after. So yes, ma'am.
And tell me again the makeup of the commission.
The commission itself, the proposed makeup is part of what we are putting together to present to the Boards and Commissions Committee in January.
Okay.
So we have some draft information, but haven't finalized what the recommendation would look like yet.
But could be considered, that you would have council selection like the other boards and commissions.
Yes, there would be appointments from council based on the background and knowledge of the committee or the commission members.
Are there any, because some of our commissions require subject matter experts in that, and I assume that this will have a level that will be as well.
Yes.
And I wonder too, along those lines, if, some of the boards have like an entity will appoint, like would Art Center Waco or, certain entities, in addition to Creative Waco, who's kind of managing it, might have a subject matter expert that would be helpful in addition to kind of maybe at-large citizen appointees as well, or by district citizen appointees as well. But that might be something to look into. But I like this. I like the idea of getting some guidelines and getting some kind of putting some policy, and also our citizens having input into our public art. I think we've benefited in the last 10 years by a lot of great public art in Waco and McLennan County, and I'm grateful for all the good work. I know that Creative Waco has done a great job with a lot of that. And I think that there's also some public art that we probably look at and think like, well, I kind of wish we had some guidelines for that. Not the majority by any means, but so I think going forward, it's probably a good idea to have some guidelines and some input on this because we project pretty well when we're real intentional about it.
And I can imagine that this will be helpful because I know that we've had very high-level conversations about how we, even as we do economic development, the things that we can ask of those because there are several cities that require when business entities and corporations come in that they too participate in what the public art footprint looks like. And I assume that there would be some massaging of policy from this commission in alignment with the economic development team to get that worked out. Yes? Could be.
I
Maybe.
certainly think that's an appropriate place to place the agenda, or replace the item for discussion.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation, Amanda. Great summary of where we're going with public art, as some of the council members have said. In the last 10 years, we've seen a lot of it here, and coming up with, and we want to see more. It's great. It defines a great city by having great public art. So memorializing a process here, I think, is super important with the approval levels and the clarity. And really appreciate Creative Waco's input here. Been instrumental in getting the city to where it is. I also want to recognize Creative Waco board member and former city councilman Johnny Kennard is in the gallery today. Thank you for being here. But anyway, Amanda, thanks for the presentation, and that was great. Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
City Manager Ford, what do you think about work session 2024-985?
I think y'all have done so well that we should reward you with the final work session of the day. And I don't see Mr. Peters. Oh, there he is. Okay. But no, I think Clint, if you'll, you don't have to go through all of them, and if you want to pick and choose which ones you think are most interesting to the council, and let's take 10 minutes to finish this out, and that way the council can have a break before exec session.
Sure thing. Thank you, Bradley, Mayor, Council. I'll focus on 2, actually, out of the 4. All 4 were recommended for approval by the Plan Commission. The first one is a final PUD of the Callan Village edition. Y'all have seen this recently on some of the commercial up front along Ritchie Road. This is phase 4. This is actually a residential phase of the development, all single family, planned for 134 lots. This is the development plan. You can see in the back left corner, rear left corner is the phase under consideration for phase 4. And then the hatched area has already been developed, phase 1 and 2. The project actually is developing about 19% below density that was in their concept plan, mainly because of the larger lots. The concept plan had 65-foot minimum size, 65-foot wide minimum lot size. And the lots in the first 2 phases have come in between 80 and 90 feet wide. And this phase will have between 65 and 80-foot wide lots. So you can see the numbers there, projected at 400 lots and they're at 324. And then here's pictures of it. These are this is phase 2 that's being currently developed. And then phase 4 is back behind that. And Plan Commission did recommend approval. There was no opposition to this, and there is a conditions, our standard conditions with plating and construction. There is a special condition on this one on the property line that abuts the Stanford Oaks subdivision. The PUD had an 8-foot privacy fence requirement on that boundary. And speaking of fences, our next ordinance is dealing, good segue there. Dealing with fence ordinance amendment. This is something that City of Waco is bringing forward to amend the ordinance to address criteria for fence construction, height, installation, and maintenance standard. One of the main reasons why we reviewed our ordinance and are bringing this to you is over the past several years, we saw a trend in numerous variance requests to our fence height requirement. In residential zoning, we have a maximum fence height of 6 feet, and the commercial of 8 feet. And over the past 5 years, we've had about 40 applications requesting variance to that. So when you're seeing a lot of variance requests, that means your ordinance probably needs to be reviewed and tweaked based on what you're seeing in those variance requests. Also, we wanted to address some public safety concerns that we have. That 6-foot height allowance applies to anywhere, so you can put a 6-foot fence, privacy fence in your front yard, as well as the rear side yards. And when you fence off, privacy fence on your front yard, it does create some safety issues with not only people seeing driving down the street, but also with our police department knowing what's behind the fence with call to services. And then our regulations were kind of spread out all over our ordinances and codes, so this consolidates them all in one place in our zoning ordinance. So what we're proposing is a fence height requirement of 4 feet in the front yard. That's down from 6 feet currently. But we will, the ordinance does allow you to go above 4 feet up to 6 feet in the front yard if that top 2 feet is at least 50% transparent. So you can get that, you know, see on both sides looking in and looking out, so you don't have those safety issues related to not only visual obstructions, but just seeing what's going on in the yards. So that's the change. And then in our rear and side yard fences, which currently have a height in residential, a maximum height in residential of 6 feet, you're allowed to go up to 8 feet. So there's built-in variances for certain situations, and those are where you have grade deviations from adjacent fences and properties. So you have some height changes from the different properties, as well as if you're adjacent to an alley or a commercial property. So those are the 3 big items that we saw with our variance request. So we built in automatic variances if you meet one of those criteria. And then the rest of the ordinance deals with reinforcing and consolidating our existing rules on fences, dealing with easements, you know, what fences can go in which easements, side obstructions, and then our maintenance standards that are in our property maintenance code. We did do a pretty extensive review on this. We got feedback from not only peer cities, but neighboring cities, what their ordinances are. We met with our developers group, neighborhood associations. We took this to our zoning board of adjustment that was hearing all the variances to get their feedback, and then worked with code compliance, legal, and police in drafting this ordinance. And then Plan Commission also held 2 public hearings and 2 work sessions to discuss this, and recommends it by a vote of 10-0 to y'all. And that's it on the 2 ordinances.
Will this in any way affect the fences that are already up in the neighborhood?
That's a great question. So any fence that's existing is not impacted by this ordinance. It's only new fences.
Thank you.
Clint, quick question. Did you guys give any consideration to so you put an automatic variance in for 8 feet if it's an alley or a commercial zoning. I've had the question come up from people if they're if they back up to a really busy road. Is that something y'all considered, or is it something you would just look at an individual variance?
Yeah, so you still have the option to request variances to the board. So that was one of the items that we looked at. I think just because of you know, you have properties at front streets and back up the streets, and it wasn't consistent. We felt like that probably still needed to go to the Board of Adjustment.
Gotcha.
And not be an automatic variance.
So it's alleyways or commercial,
Commercial zoning or commercial use. So, because we had some situations, because the ordinance currently says commercial zoning, but we have some situations where there's commercial use and office zoning, or the zoning's not correct, so commercial use you could have.
Well, because I'm thinking, I guess, in my house, yes, I have an alley, but then there's the other side is not. So you could have 8 feet on the back and then 6 feet, it'd have to be 6 feet on the side unless I got a variance.
That, or if you had met the other criteria for you know, if you had grade separation from your neighbor, things like that, if you were up against the residential. That's all I have.
That's all you're going to cover, Clint?
Yeah. And the other 2 are both recommended for approval. No opposition on either one of those.
Great, I appreciate the work on that fence deal, because I know the folks I know that are on ZBA, that is a bunch of just that fence height, so I hope that addresses a lot of the issues there. Josh, didn't you serve on ZBA for a while?
3 years or so.
Did you see any fence issues there?
We would quite commonly see a request from 6 feet to 8 feet a lot of times abutting commercial or high-traffic areas, alleys and other things. So that was a pretty fair to say, my recollection, that and cul-de-sacs were kind of the mainstays of what we did there.
Sounds like we proactively are addressing that.
To me, this feels like is just a pretty reasonable and needed change.
Great. Thanks, Director Peters. Anything else, Bradley? City Manager Ford, we covered it?
The call for future agenda items is it.
We will do that at this time. Are there any requests for future agenda items? I see none. I do want to commend council on the decorative attire that we have here, quite festive, except for George.
Wait now.
Bring into action. Okay, we will now recess the work session and reconvene regular session for executive session as read into the record by the city secretary at 4:54 p.m.
Notice is hereby given that the City Council will go into executive session in accordance with the following provisions. Attorney briefing, Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551.071. Senate Bill 1827 passed in the 87th regular session of the Texas Legislature. Texas Global Opioid State Settlements, Texas Opioid Abatement Fund, Council and Settlement Allocations Term Sheet, and Kroger's Texas Settlement Agreement, and full release of all claims. Attorney briefing, Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551.071, and Real Property, Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551.072. Water Park Ground Lease and Operating Agreement with Waco Family Entertainment, LLC, assignment, consent to assignment, and assumption of Water Park Ground Lease and Operating Agreement with the Waco Family Entertainment, LLC, Store Master Funding, 8 LLC, and Horizon Family Holding LLC, consent to sublease of Water Park Ground Lease and Operating Agreement with Store Master Funding, 8 LLC, and amendments number 1 and 2 to the Water Park Ground Lease and Operating Agreement with Store Master Funding, 8 LLC. Personnel, Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551.074, discussion of the city attorney appointment process and review and discuss potential candidates for the position of city attorney. Real Property, Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551.072, and Economic Development, Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551.087. We are now in executive session.